couldn't cure everybody that we came into contact with, but we could care for everyone.
I have shifted tremendously.
Ordaining today is just this sense of onwards.
It's important to teach complex adaptive systems in the course of this program, so people understood that even if they're working just on a one-to-one level, that they are also impacting the system. My vision is everybody should be a chaplain, but this kind of a chaplain, a Upaya kind of a chaplain, because we should all be addressing the spiritual and existential issues that are present in our world.
Welcome to Cafe 229. My name is Joanne Chang. As you just saw the teaser of a compassionate chaplaincy, our guest today, Roshi Joan Halifax, is here today with us. Welcome, Roshi.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here.
It's such an honor to have you with us at C.A.F.E Center today. You are such a multi, writer, books writer, as well as scientist and distinguished scholar of the Library of Congress, and especially the founder of Upaya Center. At the end of the teaser, you mentioned that everyone should be a chaplain. Could we start with our chat today about why did you say that at the end as a very important remark?
The role of the chaplain is based in the experience of compassion. And chaplains are those individuals who seek deeply to build a relationship of trust through compassionate presence with those who are suffering. And it's not that a compassion involves quotes help. I remember a wonderful quote from Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. And she said, helping, fixing, and serving are three different ways of seeing life. Mm-hmm. And when you help, you see life as weak. Mm-hmm. When you fix, you see it as broken. But when you serve, you see life and the person as whole. So a chaplain is one who, through this relationship of trust, supports individuals through deep presence, and also creates the context that is relational, where people can see themselves deeply. So I said that remark at the end of the trailer because I felt that what a different world we would live in if all of us were able to offer compassionate presence to each other.
That's such a wonderful remark, because "慈济" actually in English means compassion in action. So I see your work aligns with our foundation so deeply, and it's very meaningful for me to be here to chat with you. And so I wanted to find out what inspired you to begin those chaplaincies in the first place. You started Upaya Center, 1990, and those chaplaincies is part of your program. How did you start with this? You must have seen, certain things, and what inspired you to do that? Because that aligns with our Master Cheng Yen's work very closely.
Yes, I think so. I began my work in this field actually in the mid-1960s. I'm coming into my 80th year. Mm-hmm. So I've been around for a while.
Wonderful.
And I was a social activist in the mid-60s, and I still am, mm-hmm. many decades later. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came up for me when I was a young person involved in anti-war activities and also civil rights activities. That field that really opened up for us in the 1960s was that it was not only about addressing issues related to justice and to structural violence, but it was also how we worked with our own mind, heart, and body in the process of serving others, of addressing issues of deep suffering. And it really took me many years of struggle, of challenge, and of learning to understand what it meant to offer compassionate presence. And that relates in part to understanding what compassion is. As you mentioned, I was a distinguished scholar at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And there I began, as a result of the decades of work that I've been part of, in the end-of-life care field, as well as working in the prison system and on issues related to social and environmental justice. I really wanted to understand what compassion is. What is it? It's not just this deep impulse to be of benefit to others, to alleviate suffering, the suffering of others. I actually wanted to go upstream and to look more deeply. And I realized that many of the programs that have been involved in training people in compassion, as well as the fact that there's a deep deficit of compassion, not only in medicine, but in our culture in general, that it was important to understand deeply what compassion is so that I could see if I could develop an approach to training others in compassion that was more effective, or that was effective. And so that work has been occupying me for many decades, as you can imagine. But it really came into focus when I was at the library, where I saw that compassion is actually composed of non-compassion elements. And those elements are all trainable. And what happens when those aspects of our subjectivity are strong and are nourished, and we are context sensitive, what emerges is compassion, which is a process. And I call it inactive. Inactive with an E-N-A-C-T-I-V-E, not I-N. That is to say that it is non-volitional, it is adaptive, compassion is context sensitive, and that genuine compassion is this experience that is not based on habitual patterns, but it can be nourished by qualities of our mind, heart, and body that are, as I said, actually trainable. So this was one piece in this work. Another piece is, as I said, the attitude and the role of the chaplain, I feel, is something that every mother, father, clinician, lawyer, teacher, politician, environmentalist, humanitarian, we all should have. And so that the training of people in compassionate presence, for me, is of vital importance in relation to the future of our planet.
That is very interesting. You mentioned about the compassionate part is made of the uncompassionate part. I saw one of your YouTube, also on your website, and that kind of aligns with our Master Chang Yan's talk. One of her sentences goes, we turn the garbage into gold, and gold circulates around the world and benefits others. I think this is it's a similar idea and similar concept we have here. I'm totally amazed by when I first saw you talking about the compassionate part is made of uncompassionate ingredients. I think it's such a wonderful depth of the Buddhism there. It's like karmic and affinities and causes and conditions transform us there. Okay, so I guess I am
Well,
very.
if I can just,
Yes.
I just want to say, actually, it's a little bit different.
Okay, please.
Because when I say that compassion is made of non-compassion elements, what I'm saying is the non-compassion elements are actually not the garbage, though I love that transformative perspective. And it actually reminded me of something I witnessed many years ago when Thich Nhat Hanh was at the Ojai Foundation. And I arrived at the place where he was going to give a talk at this program that I was coordinating. And I smelled something funny, and I saw on the altar there was garbage. And I was kind of like, oh. And then I got it. I thought some very brilliant student had actually put, old orange peels and dead things on the altar, very much in line with what your teacher has embodied in her compassionate work. That is that garbage transforms into, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, the rose, into that which is beautiful and benefits others. But in the model that I'm talking about, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
In other words, it's not compassion is made of uncompassionate elements. No, I don't mean that.
Okay.
I say compassion is made of non-compassion elements, like attention, for example,
Okay.
like prosociality, like insight,
Okay.
embodiment, and so forth. And all those are healthy aspects of our human experience. And when they are primed, when they are nourished, they are a suite of qualities that actually give rise to compassion. Our capacity to be context sensitive, to be aware of what is happening in the present moment, and to respond in an unselfish or selfless way to benefit others. So it's a little bit different. And I wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. That I can totally understand. It's slightly different approach to dissect compassion. I think this compassion is such an important component in your Upaya Center as well as in C.A.F.E Center. And you have designed so many very meaningful programs like, like for the hospice for end of life, jail, school, and also especially for minorities like female sisters, youngsters. You really have taken care of different aspects of the weak part of the society to really reach out to take care of them. And I'm just interested in finding out, how do you train your chaplains to develop this concept of compassion? Because it is a concept, but when we really have to make it a concrete program project and take training to step by steps, what is exactly you train your chaplains? What do they do, or what do they need to apply to from transforming the Dharma into what they will be helpful, what they say, what they do exactly to help those people who are indeed the weaker chain of the society?
It's a wonderful question. Thank you. We could say the more vulnerable or more marginalized individuals in society, what we endeavor to do in the chaplaincy training is to bring the training of the chaplain into the lived experience of what the Buddha taught, as the threefold training. And this is a process of spiritual formation that we nourish in our chaplain candidates, where there's a deep emphasis on practice
Okay.
that is really settling the mind and creating the conditions where one familiarizes oneself with one's mental continuum, the contents of the mind, our triggers, our reactivities, our wounds, our tendency to project positively or negatively on others, our attachment to our narratives. So that's a very deep process that we encourage and support in the chaplaincy training, knowing that chaplains will be the ones who come alongside those who are suffering and will provide, as I've called it, compassionate presence for those who are suffering in an unmediated, unfiltered way. So the threefold training is a deep a reduction of the eightfold path of the Buddha into sila, that is precepts. So needless to say, there's a very strong emphasis on precepts. You know, what it is to be a Buddha, what it is to live deeply our values, what it is to strengthen the healthy aspects of our character. So that is sila. Samadhi, this is practice, mind training. What it is to familiarize ourselves with our own mental continuum, and also to learn how to get grounded and to cultivate an unselfish motivation. And to have the insight into our own subjectivity and the intersubjectivity with the world around us so that we can respond in a loving and aligned way. So that is, you know, really important. And then prajna, that is wisdom. You know, what is it to be a wise person? Not just a smart person, but a wise person. And the wiser you are, the more you will want to live a life that is deeply loving and ethical, warm and connected, the less your mind will be disturbed, and so on and so forth. So that's, you know, the Buddha Dharma provides an extraordinary platform for the development of individuals, the inner development of individuals who want to have the capacity to come alongside those who are suffering.
Wonderful. So cultivating the insight, following the Eightfold Path and the precepts, and you modify these things into our daily terms and more. That's less of an ancient, you know, wording to apply to our to your program of chaplaincies. That's wonderful. I actually got so interested in your programs, and I read people wrote about you being there with people who are at the near end of their life, and that you were right there, be with them and held their hands and held them deep, you know, closely. I wanted to know how did you start? I know you have maybe some personal experiences. It seems like it's what I read. How did you started with that? Did you because you know, as a Buddhist, life and death is the most fundamental thing we have to face, and it's something that's very challenging for any of us to face. So how did you start with that, and what did you go through to create this program in particular? I'm just curious about that.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. You know, I think that my own path opened up deeply when I was a very young child. And I became critically ill and lost my eyesight and was in a state of, you know, grave illness for 2 years and unable to see. And it was in that experience that I discovered I had an inner life. That I, needless to say, I had been able to see the world. And then one morning I woke up and I couldn't see. And I was really ill. And as a result of that, not only did I discover I had an inner life, but my family hired a Black woman to take care of me. And this woman had been, well, her mother had been a slave. And she was, her family had come originally from Africa and then had been slaved on a slave ship to the West Indies and Bahamas and moved to southern Florida. And they brought this woman into our family, and I discovered the most compassionate person I would ever meet in my life. Someone who was completely unselfish, someone who had intrinsic or fundamental joy, someone who loved me in an unfiltered way. And I think that her influence on my life was a great gift because it didn't turn this childhood illness into a pitiful narrative. It actually made me realize, even, decades and decades later, that just like your teacher talks about the garbage turning into gold, that something that could have been considered to be deeply traumatizing and disabling for me for the rest of my life actually became the greatest strength in my life, which is the strength not only to introspect, to look inward and to feel the world around me, but also the strength to love.
That's a wonderful explanation. That I love the two things you just said, that even though when you became blind, actually it opens up your inner world. So it's almost like Christianity, says that if the God closes the door, it opens another window for you. So I think that's sometimes and then the wonderful example you had, the Bodhisattva who came and be with you in the hardest time of your life and transform, and you took that love and transformed into a bigger love, and that you pass around, and for so many years, since 1960s up until now, you are such a busy person. You have done so much for our society, domestically and internationally. It is very, very touching to read about what you have on your website, and because you are a scientist, you created your website in such a way that's integrating Buddhism in the language of a modern people and scientific educated people, way that who can understand that. I particularly love your website and got very interested in all your training programs. So among all different chaplaincy programs that you train them, and also maybe that will apply to non-Buddhist or Buddhist, because at C.A.F.E we have people of different religions. It's a charity foundation. So I guess, and you train people in different, as a different chaplains, maybe they weren't a Buddhist to begin with. So I wonder, what is the general thing that connects of all different programs to you or to your disciple, that you coach them in different disciplines? I guess, and also that applies to my next questions. How do we apply Dharma into our daily life in different programs in details exactly? Because we say Dharma and we think we are Buddhists, but how do we exactly, how do you apply that in your daily life? Would you share that insight with us, please?
I think one of the challenges that any religion faces is that, all religions in a funny way are clubs. This is what my wonderful teacher, Roshi Bernie Glassman, always was, saying. Buddhism is a club, Zen is a club. I mean, it's, there's the members and then the non-members. And I think that's a challenge. And what I think is really important, and I think your teacher emphasizes this, my teacher did, hopefully I do, of looking at, that Buddhism is a process that we enter into in order to actually not be in a club, but to be a good human being, and to practice radical inclusivity. And this, I think, is particularly poignant, or really showed up in my life when I worked as a volunteer at the Penitentiary of New Mexico, on death row and in maximum security. There I was with men who had killed children. Some had killed their parents. Some had killed their wives and lovers. Some had killed randomly. And I really learned it wasn't about being a Buddhist. It was about being awake and about being a loving person and allowing my humanity to be present, so that I could meet people who society abhors or scorns or warehouses, but always standing before me when I was working in the prison system was a human being. And that sensibility, I think, is so important, particularly at this time of great polarization.
That's wonderful. Being a good human being for others. That's the general theme behind everything we do and in our daily practice. Wonderful. So as established as you are, as smart and wonderful, who has contributed so much at your Upaya Center as well as globally, I'm curious, what is the challenge for you still now, where you are, to be a Roshi or to be a role model and to promote Buddhism in general in the States, because it's a Christian country and Muslim country, or because I think C.A.F.E encounter challenges, and as as a Buddhist and as a more like a foreign foundation. So what is the challenge for you? I'm just curious. Would you envision certain things that you feel like you want to do more, but there's always obstacles there for you? If you don't mind sharing.
Well, the challenge, I think, is the challenge we all have. And that is that we're all works in process.
Okay.
That, yes, as Zen Master Dogen said, practice and enlightenment are not separate. Dokan, the circle of the way. But, the truth is that we all have feet of clay. We all have wounds that are not healthy ones, that influence our lives in ways that harm ourselves and harm others. And one of the examples I often give is in relation to someone whom I love and admire so much, and that's His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And His Holiness gets up every morning at 3 a.m. to practice. And you would think, well, he's already enlightened. He's a perfect bodhisattva. He's Avalokiteshvara, himself.
Yes.
And yet still His Holiness recognizes the importance of taking care of the mind continually, and the heart and the body. And sometimes, this is a rather primitive analogy, but I sometimes compare it to, oral hygiene. If you just brush your teeth, once, and then for 6 months, you don't do anything, and you go to your dental hygienist and she looks in your mouth and goes, "Oh dear." Then, the kind of daily maintenance of the mind, heart, and body that really helps to keep ourselves present, caring, and also self-honest. honest about our own challenges. So I have my own challenges. You know, some of those challenges are in relation to my body getting older. So, you know, I like to teach in the morning, not in the afternoon, for example, because
Okay.
I tire in the afternoon.
Right.
Or I have gone for over 40 years to the Himalayas, bringing clinicians into high altitude villages to deliver healthcare where people have no access. But I'm not so sure that I can go in September, just because I think my age is caught up with me. I might try one more time, but it's very, very tough on the body. So I've aged out. You know, another thing is that sometimes we interact in ways that are unskillful. I include myself in that situation where, you know, someone who has some stature, a little bit like myself, you know, whatever I say has somewhat more weight than, say, other people. And then people, you know, feel really hurt. So, you know, sometimes I say things in a very direct way, and people are, you know, like, oh, she's mad at me. But I'm not mad at them, but I'm just, you know, kind of energetic. But it's taken that way. You know, we all have triggers, we all have wounds, we all have feet of clay. And I think that all of those difficulties, you know, that I've had and that my colleagues have had in this work,
Yes.
it, like your teacher suggests, it really has helped build strength in my character in a way that has kept me maybe a little more humble, a little more empathic.
Wow. Well, I appreciate your honesty. I think the physical challenge is for everybody when we age. You are not alone. But what you said, and I think it's amazing you still travel to Himalaya to deliver the medical goods. That's you know, it's so much needed there. That's wonderful. And also your honest and your humble. Talk about the, you know, still cultivating better relational skills. I think that is something I constantly work on. I teach. I'm a musician and a professor at New York City, and you know, we encounter our students, colleagues, and there's so many people we deal with every day. It is so challenging to say the right word at the right time with the right amount of timing and a smile or facial expressions. It is the right amount that's constantly needs to be aware and adjusted. And I totally hear you. And I think it's such a humble statement you share with us.
Well, let me mention one other thing.
Yes, please.
And that has to do with gender. Your teacher is a woman.
Yes.
And maybe our age is similar. How old is your teacher?
She is over 80 something. Yes, similar to probably, yes, to you.
Like maybe a little older.
Yeah,
I'm
a little older.
79.
Okay, yes, she's older than you. Yes, a few years.
But you know, as a Western woman, but I think it's more the case for Asian women. But I can't say for sure, you know, but I can say as a Western woman, the expectations of me growing up were very low. And then as I began to accomplish certain things in the world, the expectations of me, in fact, were greater than my male peers.
Oh.
And, you know, it's been a very interesting journey to see how the gender bias in Western culture operates in relation to women. And I think that what's happening right now around gender fluidity is actually quite healthy, that the binary is beginning to break down.
Yes.
And part of it, I believe, has to do with the harms perpetrated against women and also the harm men have been subjected to and subjected themselves to in relation to their character development.
Absolutely. I'm in the academia, and it is a gender bias field, and it is something I am very aware of. And as you put it, this is the best time for us as a woman and especially, as a minority woman here in the States. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, COP26 in Glasgow. What is kind of fascinating, aside from people like Cristiana Figueres, a very powerful international diplomat from Costa Rica, most of the time on the airwaves is occupied by white men. And in the streets, the opposite is happening. It is the voices of indigenous women that we are hearing. So we're in a very interesting phase shift in terms of our social development. And I'm just grateful to be alive, to see, be part of or to witness, participate in to the extent that I am able, what I consider to be a very important era of psychosocial transformation, which is going to require a lot of chaplains.
Yes, I totally support that. I think I totally agree with you. Our Master Cheng Yen is the only female leader in our Buddhism in Taiwan, and that is one of the reasons I follow her, because she is such a figure, and she came from nowhere and nothing, and she built this charity foundation and has inspired all the females. A lot of the members in this foundation majority of us are female. We follow her because we note the importance of a gender, and we can offer as equally or even more than the other gender. I think that's something, it's a big statement from her as well as us followers. Thank you, Roshi. I wanted to ask you one more question. That's what is your take home for our members or audience today? As who you are, do you have a take home message that you would like to, one more thing to share with us?
Well, I think the work that your Maha community does internationally is extraordinary.
Thank you.
And as some of your members know, I deeply support what you all are doing, and I feel a part of it because at this time in our world, not only compassionate presence, but also wisdom and courage are essential. That is this feeling that we are responsible at this time to be part of this movement of change towards the benefit, not just of ourselves, those in our club, but of all beings.
Yes.
And it takes, being a bodhisattva or an aspiring bodhisattva, having the wit and the inspiration, but also to understand that this is about sense making in the world. What we as a human community of great diversity can engage in that will bring coherence, appreciation, and greater love into a world that is deeply imperiled.
Wonderful. I really appreciate this talk today. I also wanted to say from my personal perspective that I think C.A.F.E Foundation and the Upaya can collaborate, some work together, some events together, and we can certainly learn from you. Especially, we are thinking about creating a chaplaincy in Hawaii to begin with. It's more about clinical and end of life and the social chaplaincy. To bring, we haven't decided yet, but you already established for many decades, and we would love to keep in touch with you and learn from you. If that sounds like an okay proposal to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful meeting you. And I look forward to sharing the path ahead.
Yes, please. We will be in touch. And thank you for being here today, Roshi. It is such a pleasure and appreciate that. Thank you so much, Roshi. So if you're interested in the Roshi's film, Compassionate Chaplaincy, just scroll down, find the link underneath the talk description. And thank you for joining us, Cafe 229. And I'll see you next time.